Thanks for stopping by the channel, guys. So here's a couple of photos that I'm drawing inspiration from as I reimagine my HO scale BNSF railroad, and I'm trying to model it after the Columbia River Gorge. In this update, I'll show you what I've been up to, including getting the backdrop up and painted, painting the track, and trying my hand at foam scenery work. That's all coming up. So one of the next projects that I want to tackle on the rebuild of the layout here is getting the rest of the backdrop up where I need it. So I'm going to have a tunnel portal that sets right in this area here. So I need some backdrop from here to about here. So I'm going to get that piece cut from a piece that I salvaged from the old layout. I'll put a cleat in here so that I can clear my shelf brackets, and I'll run it to about here. My tunnel portal will go here, and then I can tie my rock work into that. This is another area where I'll need to add some backdrop, so I'll get that piece cut as well and installed. And then back in the back of the closet area, I'm gonna have a few other pieces of backdrop. I'll get those cut, and then I'll show you what I did when I get those installed. Okay, so I put some backdrop up. Some of this is in a little bit rougher shape, but once it's painted, it's gonna look just fine. So I put a piece up there. You can see one in the back, and then I extended the backdrop over, kind of coming into the yard. So what I'm gonna do now is mix up some drywall mud, and I'm gonna start filling the gaps so I can get ready to paint this. Okay, so I got my drywall mud setting on the seams here. I'm just letting that dry. And I think the next thing I'm gonna do, I took all the rail cars and locomotives off the track. I think the next thing I really need to do is paint the rails. I'm gonna try to do that with a rattle can and just stay at a really low angle so I catch the inside face of the back rail and the outside face of the front rail, kind of from the viewing angle. I'm not so worried about the back side, but without getting a ton of paint all over the ties, I just gonna go nice and flat with the angle, and we'll see how that works out. So now I'm using some of this older track that I have, and I'm taking some of the ties off of it. And on my new track where I made my connections on the flex track, I'd have to remove a tie or two. So I'm just replacing them, and I'm taking a hobby knife and I'll cut the spikes off here, and they'll slide right underneath. And then when I do my ballasting with the glue, they'll lock them all in place. So I'm gonna make a bunch of these, and I'll just keep sliding them in. Okay, so I'll show you how I'm doing painting the rail. I'm just using a piece of cardboard kind of as a masking screen. I'm just hitting it real, kind of keeping that flat angle here, and just getting rid of that shine is all I'm looking for. I've got to do the rails on the other side of the lift out because it can be viewed from the other side. So I'll get that done, and that'll take care of the rails, getting those painted. So I'll try to show you a little better. You couldn't really see it very good in that last angle, but I'm just using a piece of cardboard kind of as a shield, and I'm using just a rattle can. This is just brown. It's literally brown, flat brown. And I'm just taking short blasts and just working my way along the track, but I'm trying to keep that angle flat. I'm not coming from the top. And then I'll let that dry, and then I'll come back and I'll clean the tops of the rails, and that'll be done. Okay, so I'm getting ready to paint the backdrop. I'm just gonna paint it a flat, kind of light blue color. You're not gonna see hardly any of it when the scenery's all done. But I just took some cardboard and cut it into about, I don't know, these are like 8-inch strips, and just laid it over the track, and then I'll just move it once I get done with this section. That's just to keep any spatter. I'm gonna use a roller for putting this paint on. Even taking your time, you get a little bit of spatter. I had a previous layout where I didn't do this, and I had little blue dots all over, so this is an easy way to take care of that. So here's a look at the backdrop. I'm just gonna spin around here for the upper deck of the layout, all repainted. This is gonna work out just fine for what I'm doing here. Most of this is gonna be covered with rock work. You're never gonna even see it. So I wasn't too worried about trying to be perfect with it. And you can see where there's spots where there is no backdrop. There's gonna be big tunnels in those areas. So I wasn't worried about wasting my time and resources putting up backdrop and painting it in those areas. So the backdrop's done, so moving on. So here's a photo of one of the tunnels located near Lyle, Washington, along the Columbia River Gorge. And I want to use this photo to try to draw inspiration as I start thinking about building scenery for the new reimagined layout. Okay, so this is the area of the layout where I'm thinking that I can model that photo that we just looked at. So if I run the slope down here, I can get that look, put the tunnel portal somewhere in here. I can get where it widens out and kind of has that little shelf before the track leads into the tunnel. And then once I get back here, I'll have the portal. What I'm thinking of doing is using some of this 2-inch foam insulation board and stacking it. And then I'll carve it and shape it, do the rock work. But to give me that kind of terraced look, to build that terrain up, the scenery, so it'll match what I see in the photo. And then I have some 1-inch foam insulation board as well that I can laminate if I need a little bit more elevation. But the other thing I can do is I can carve the face of this, and then once we get up above where this plateaus off in the photo, I can carve this and then that'll finish out the scenery to the top of the backdrop here. Okay guys, so I'll show you my first attempt at building with this foam insulation board. This whole thing weighs maybe 2 pounds. It's very lightweight, but I built it modularly. So I can set this piece in here like so. And I left where the tunnel portal will be nice and flat, so once I build tunnel portals I can attach them. And then I have another piece, again another modular piece that I can slide up in here and go from sky backdrop to sky backdrop. So now that I had the rough shape of my foam insulation board mountain put together, what I did is I took it back out in the 2 pieces, and then I started using just hand tools to kind of refine the shape a little bit, knocking off the hard edges. And then I went and watched YouTube and watched a few videos on how to carve rock in foam insulation board. And I'll show you how that went. So I started with some of this shape, and I'm just using the techniques that I've seen online where you just kind of score it 1/4 to 1/2 inch deep with a utility knife in both directions. And then I'm just going over it with something with a hard edge, just kind of getting it to flake away. So I'll keep plugging away using this technique and then get things cleaned up, and I'll come back when I set it in place and we'll see what it looks like. Okay, so I've got the initial carving done here on my first section of rock work. And what I'll tell you is it's working out okay so far. There's some things I'm gonna do different. But what I did is I used a utility knife and I just made slits about 1/4 inch to 3/8 of an inch deep. And then I went horizontally. There's a few spots where I kind of went a little bit of a diagonal. And then I used this piece of MDF with kind of a sharper edge and just drug it across there to break that off. In some of the other videos I've seen, they used a putty knife for that. I have this temporary tunnel portal here, and I've got a train running. And look at how putting that simple little piece of black poster board really sells the tunnel effect. The tunnel just turns to darkness when the train goes through, rather than being able to see the wall or seeing the blue foam or whatever. It just completely disappears. I really like that. So in closing, I did check elevations for well cars with double stacked of containers, and I've got about 1/8 of an inch clearance using my temporary tunnel portal. Obviously I have much more clearance inside. So I think that's gonna wrap it up for this video. Just a couple quick things. If you're liking this, smash that like button. If you're digging this series and like to follow along, hit that subscribe button. We just went over 1,000 subscribers on the last video. So thanks to everybody who's hit that subscribe button. And if you want to be one of the first to be part of the next 1,000, hit that subscribe button. We'd appreciate it. Anyways, guys, thanks for coming along on this journey with me. If you have any tips or tricks that you've learned using this foam, put them in the comments. I read that stuff. I really would appreciate any feedback I can get on that, because this is all new to me using this foam. Thanks for watching, guys. Happy railroading.